you take your tablet, you go home, and then you give birth. And I was like, whoa. I can't give birth. I can't give birth to my dead baby. Like, I can't do it. I'm not strong enough for that.
What snacks have you currently bribed your children with right now?
What? Sweets.
Sweets.
That was chocolate, which she ate the chocolate. Smoothie, yogurt, crisps, and now she's eating a Baby Bell.
Amazing. Have you taken the red bit off first?
No, because she likes to do that herself.
Right. As a
Her
kid then,
favourite.
do you like Baby Bells?
No, not really.
Oh,
Although
really?
I did have a bite of one yesterday when I was cutting up for Rocco, and I was like, actually, I could probably tolerate that more now.
So does your daughter then, once she's unwrapping it, does she put the bit on her nose like she's Mr. Tumble? Because that's what I used to do, and Mr. Tumble wasn't even a thing when I was a kid.
No, but she's left half of it on and then taken half of it off, so maybe she takes the other half.
Amazing. So, Beth, first off,
Yeah.
thanks so much for joining me on the podcast today. Do you remember where you were on the 1st of July, 2011?
Yeah, I do. I could tell you where I was.
Where are you?
My prom.
I don't actually know if that was the date, but that's the date you posted it on your Facebook. And I was thinking earlier on, the earliest memory I had of you was when I photographed you at the request of your family, no weird like stalking the prom girls, when you were going on for your prom. But then I remembered, weren't you about a year before that? Weren't you Carnival Queen?
Yes, I was.
So I must have photographed you for that as well, because I remember doing that as well.
Yeah.
So before I get any kind of legal cases against me, I just want to point out that obviously most people may or may not know that I've run a photography business for the last 18 years. And I have had the pleasure of not only knowing you, but knowing your family.
Yeah.
And I was thinking of all the things that I remember there was a bit of a running joke for a while, because it was like,
What next?
What are the Tippets doing next, and what am I going to end up photographing? So off the top of my head, I photographed the Carnival Queen when you were Carnival Queen, your prom.
Yeah.
I photographed your sister's wedding, your sister for a magazine, your other sister for headshots in the studio.
I remember that.
Your dad's business.
Yeah.
I did some work for a business your mum was working for. Yeah, when she was working for Lady Aaron.
Yeah.
I know, right? I photographed your dad's business. I think I said that. I photographed your dog. And was your dog called Stitch? Did I just make that?
Yeah. No, that was Stitch, yeah.
Yeah. Literally, don't even know where that came from this morning. And then back to Beth again. Beth's pregnancy, pre-wedding, wedding. Oh no, yeah, because you had the baby before.
I had baby before, yeah.
Out of wedlock. Naughty. Pre-wedding, baby shoot, kids shoot.
Yes, everything.
Catch me up. What's been happening? Also, something else that happened at your wedding, which I just remembered this morning. I knew this was just going to be a massive reminiscing moment for me. Do you remember at your wedding something happened? There was something very special that happened.
What?
I was knighted by your father. Yeah, I don't know if you've seen the picture. I'm crouched down, and because
my gosh, I remember that. Yeah.
Your dad had a sword, and he knighted me. Yeah, and I can't remember what he knighted me because it was very noisy and very loud, but it was something very funny.
I do remember this now, actually.
Yeah. So
I know all my life events, hey.
I know, right? So catch me up. What's new? What's happened since then? I mean, I have seen you since, but you know.
I have seen you, but not properly.
No, exactly. I mean, we have chatted in the high street, and I remember one day when I know we're probably going to go into this pretty quickly, but one day you were like, "Oh my God, you went through IVF. Oh my God, we're going through IVF. We've had one baby." And if you've ever met Beth in real life, you know that that's about as fast as she talks. And I remember having this conversation with you and going back to my wife and going, "Oh my God, Beth just told me all about going through like IVF and babies and endometriosis as well."
Yeah, I had that. Yeah, so that was the first thing. Well, I remember when I was having Vinny, actually, with the pre-baby shoot.
Yeah.
And because I was quite close to giving birth, wasn't I? I think I had that shoot, and then I had him like 4 days later or something.
Yeah. And didn't your sister, wasn't it your sister or you that had a baby, and my daughter was just come out of intensive care, and you come, was having a baby.
Yeah, totally remember that.
I'm genuinely there for everything, I tell you.
Everything.
I haven't had a Christmas invite yet. I'm really shocked.
That's coming. Yeah, I remember being in the studio and you kind of just telling me everything with, obviously I didn't have any issues, problems at that point, so I didn't really know, but obviously I sympathised with you, you know, because I was quite young, wasn't I, when I had Vinny? So I was, what I always like to say now, naive to any issues or problems. And
Yeah.
I'd love to go back to those days, you know, when you're pregnant and you're naive to labour and birth and everything, really. But yeah, so I started off then with the endometriosis after I had Vinny. So when I had Vin, I wanted a baby like another one.
Yeah.
Like, and tried, but nothing really happened. And I always remember thinking, I don't know anybody that's gone through IVF. Who can I even talk? You know, where do I go? Because I went to one clinic and where did we go? In a place in Bristol, and I just didn't really get a feel for it. I don't know what it was. I just didn't click with them. And then I remember we had that conversation, you know, back in the studio, and I was like, message you straight away, like, where did you go? Who, you know, hook me up? What do I do? And then seen you, and we took it from there, really.
I think it's crazy that a lot of people don't. You know, I've got a I think I've told you about this before, but there was a moment in sitting in the IVF waiting room where I remember sitting there and you've got the fish going around in the tank, the coffee clicks machine, which I must have put them out of business with coffee, I tell you. But you're sat there, and we won't go into too much detail. But I was there on the morning when there were 4 or 5 other guys that were queuing up to go into a special room.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking to myself, no one's talking. This is weird. No one talks to each other. At the time, there was a website called Fertility Friends, and you could get a little pin, and it was almost like the pin was almost like to say, I'm a fertility friend, and I'm also going through fertility, and I'm okay if you want to talk to me. And I'm like, wow. And then Beth, like a couple of years after we'd gone through our IVF, and as you know, we adopted in the end. We went through the IVF, and Beth's just like, I don't give a shit. Tell me more about IVF. And I'm like, yeah,
Tell me everything.
Exactly. What were the things when you first started with your IVF journey then? Because I seem to remember that you weren't really eligible for IVF.
No. So because we'd already had Vinny and we were still together, like so it would be our second child, it wasn't our first. You're not eligible in, I don't know other countries, but in the UK to have one round on the NHS free. So you do have to fund that yourself. So I mean, I was quite lucky in the sense that I was put forward through to the hospital in the fertility department. So they did offer me, I had my tubes flushed, I had Clomid, which didn't work. But that it did go on for about 6 years. You know, they did just keep fobbing me off, you know, try and lose a bit of weight, try and eat healthier, try and do this, try and do that, which I know does play a massive impact, but you can't tell me, you know, matey down the road who does X, Y, and Z and has 3 kids, one after the other, and I'm doing everything I should be doing and it's not working. Like, sometimes I do think you can't tell women that, really, you know.
That's why he says, you mean crack cocaine, eating McDonald's and drinking every weekend.
Absolutely. I'm glad you said it. But yeah, but it did take for just one doctor to. I had a fertility, like a follow-up appointment after my coma didn't work, but which I didn't understand because every time I was going for scans, I was ovulating like mad. You know, and the doctor was like, "You'll be fine. You know, you'll get pregnant this time." And obviously, your hopes get up, don't they? You know, this doctor's telling me this, and you know, it's bound to happen. But she just sat there and she said, "Look, don't waste your time anymore. Just go. You need to do IVF. Go. Unfortunately, you're going to have to fund yourself and, you know, be on your way." And obviously, I was quite upset, but I'm looking back, I'm really grateful she did kind of just say that to me. And sometimes I think I wish she said it a bit sooner so that I had all the time.
I had Jodie McLean on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about she's a sex coach, and we were talking about how that really put a strain on relationship. It definitely put a strain on our relationship. Did you experience that in the sense of it's almost like
God, yeah.
I'm ovulating,
and I would, and then when I spoke to when I'd speak to different people, they'd be like, "Oh, it's better to do it like in the middle of the day, or it's better to do it in the morning or at night." So I was going off advice I didn't even have any idea about. And so I'd be like, "Right, it's lunchtime, Kane, get home." And he would almost be like, I really can't be bothered with this anymore. And because obviously, as you may or may not know, it puts a strain in a relationship anyway, let
Yeah.
alone, your sex life, doesn't it? And,
Yeah.
you don't hate each other, but it's frustration, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think that was a massive, and looking back, we both weren't in a good place at that time. Me in particular, I do always think, like, when I like say to my friends, because unfortunately there's now people, as time goes on, more people experience it, don't they?
Mhm.
Whereas I was kind of the first of the gang
Of the gang, yeah.
to experience it. So I didn't really have anyone but you really to help me or guide me. I had to just kind of figure it out on my own, whilst watching everyone around me kind of leaving me behind.
Tripping over and just, I'm
Yeah,
pregnant.
literally.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then it's funny as well because I would imagine, I mean, we struggled in the sense of, we used to watch TV programs and they'd be like, they'd have a baby and Kate and I would just be just in tears and be like,
Yeah.
why are you crying? Or like a dog would be born on a vet show and you'd be like, I want to be a dad, I want to be a mum.
Yeah.
Like, how did that feel for you? Because obviously you were already a mum and you
Yeah.
were already like, Kane was already a dad and both awesome parents as well. But like for you, like it's interesting because you said you were quite young. I think that's great because I think so many people are having babies that are later in our life.
Yeah. And then
And
finding out.
yeah, and then maybe finding out that they have to go through IVF or anything like that.
Mm.
So I think how did you kind of like deal with that with the sense of like, everyone else was
Yeah.
yes having babies, but you also did have one already.
Yeah. I think it was quite hard because I'd always get, well, at least you've had one. And
Mhm.
yeah, I know I'd had one, but that doesn't take away anything,
Yeah.
And I was always so grateful, I'd always say to people, and I would always start with that actually. I would always say, I know I've got one and I'm so grateful. But when Vinny was young, I went back to work straight away, full
Mhm.
time. And I was always like, if that was my only chance at being a mum, I've wasted that,
Mhm.
missed out on such an important part of his childhood and something that probably wasn't important to me at the time,
Yeah.
like all I'd ever wanted to be, like you just said, was a mum, and that was all. And I was annoyed at myself for that. And I think that's also where like the sadness always came in because I was
Mhm.
like, I had that chance and I've missed out such an important chunk of his life.
Yeah.
Um, but it was always a bit of a difficult one because I would always have people saying, but you've got one and at least, you can, but yeah, it was difficult really.
Yeah.
And people
Yeah.
always say, your body can do it, and and I knew that deep down, but when you don't know what's going on and you're so out of control of something, it's like, well, what do you actually do?
Yeah.
I can't, for once, this is the one thing that, us as women, we should be able to do. I can't do it. And why?
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think that's such a cliche thing to say because you always hear people say, like, I'm a woman and I should be able to do it. But I think that is a massive thing that we do feel when we go through it.
It's I love that you said that because you said I'm a woman and I should be able to do it. And that's one thing that was a big thing for us when we went through IVF was I wished every day that I watched my other half go through probes, bloody needles, injecting. I just wish there was so many times that I wished it was my fault.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
if I could just, I used to make this. I like almost it was my like nervous energy going. I kind of wish we could just get some frozen pop and it would be fine.
Yeah.
Because if it was my fault, then it's easier to fix, right? Whereas when it's the woman's fault, there's not just the fact
No,
of
because we've got to carry them and everything.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's that like
Harder.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think the way technology has kind of moved forwards, the medicine is just
Mm.
incredible what they're able
Oh,
to
yeah.
do now. So, where did like how long ago was it when the IVF all started working? Was the IVF working, or did you have to do other stuff before the
Yeah.
IVF?
So, well, I then met my friend Holly. She then was going through the same kind of thing. And I think I'd got to a point where I was being like, there is no one here around me that can actually relate to me. And I think I was getting so down, and my friends were trying, but obviously they had things going on in their lives, which when you haven't been through something like this, you can't really relate to someone. So
Hmm.
it was hard. And Kane, being a man, like you were just saying, you don't even know what to say sometimes to us because like you
No.
want to help, but what do you do? You know.
Yeah.
Um,
And sometimes we say stuff and it's not in our intention to throw fuel onto a fire, but sometimes
no,
we can say stuff to like make light of the mood, and then you're like,
and I was,
hey, yeah, yeah.
but so I met her, and she was like, I'd kind of said to her, like, I'm going to be starting IVF soon at BCRM.
Yeah.
But I'd had an operation in the May because I'd had cysts on my ovaries and the endometriosis.
Hmm.
And I'd wanted to have it all cleared as much as I possibly could before starting so that I knew my body was in the best state possible. So she was actually a month or two ahead of me. So it was kind of like, which was really nice actually, because we had each other to go, like, do you feel like this? Do you feel like that? How do you do this? And
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I loved that. And I'll always be so grateful for her. And so she won't mind me saying this, but her first time didn't work.
Hmm.
So then by the second time, we were kind of caught up with cycles. So when I started, she was already on her second one, 2 weeks in front of me. We were quite close together.
Oh.
Um, and obviously, I was quite nervous of it not working. I never went into it thinking it's going to work, and I never went into it thinking it's not going to work. I just went into it thinking this is actually something really cool that I'm doing that no one actually gets to do on a daily basis. So,
Hmm.
and I remember saying to Kane, let's just make light of this. Like, this is something incredible that scientists have been able to do, and let's see what
Yeah.
happens. So, we did that. It came to like, do you want to like the freezing and the fresh transfer? But
Hmm.
my body didn't really. So my body collected all the eggs with the injections, but it didn't make them grow.
Right.
So I had to keep going for an extra 2 weeks. So I was on them for about the four weeks. So I
Hmm.
couldn't do the fresh transfer. I had to do the frozen. So that meant waiting for 2 more months. And to be fair, I think I would have done that anyway, because I remember thinking, well, I've waited 7 years. What's 2 months on seven
Yeah,
years?
yeah.
um, and then obviously I don't know if they did that with you, but they kind of gave me things like, don't wear perfume, don't have hot showers, eat this.
Forgot all of that
That.
stuff. Yeah.
So I like went to the extremes, like showers. I was in and out having cold showers, like the week before, a month after. Like I was drinking pomegranate juice like no tomorrow, eating
Wow.
avocado, like I was crazy. But yeah, I think, but then when obviously test day comes, it's just horrific, isn't it? I mean, we both had totally different experiences, unfortunately, of the test day.
I remember and I don't know if they did this review because BCRM's moved now as well, isn't it, into like a
Yes,
new
I have.
facility
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
And I don't know if this happened with you, but when we were there, and I still remember this so vividly that it's almost harrowing. When my other half came round, on her cannula, they'd written how many eggs, and I don't know if they did
No way. Oh my God, no, I didn't have that.
right. So I don't know whether it was just this particular nurse, but when we got in there, there was a little cubicle on the right hand side, and I basically they were like, oh, you can come in, and she's going to come round in the next kind of
Yes.
half an hour. Come in, and I was like, okay, cool. So we went in. This is when they did the egg collection,
Yeah.
and went in that little room, sat there, and I heard this woman scream, harrowing, like I've just found out all of my family being killed in an earthquake
Yeah.
disaster scream. Like I was like,
God.
oh my god, I know that's not Kate. You know when you just know, like
Yeah.
your own child scream. I
Oh
know
yeah.
if my wife screams. Takes a lot for me to make her scream. Anyway, but I remember going in and I literally first thing I looked at was her hand because this nurse had said that's what they're gonna do. I can't remember how many eggs she had, but it wasn't loads, but it was enough.
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh my god, I just had that lady scream. Is she okay?" And they were like, you could hear like partner was with her, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Yeah." And they said, Kate said, "Oh, I think she's got no eggs because like she can hear what they were talking about." And I remember at the time thinking, "Oh my god." So what after that then? So once you did all of that, did you then have
Yeah.
to then after you had your 2 months? Is that then for you? Then you go back in on the cycles again?
Yes. Oh no. So I had the egg collection,
Hmm.
and I think I got something like 14 eggs. Um,
What?
yeah, it was quite a lot. But then only when it came to it, only 3 made it.
Yeah.
Like properly made, because sometimes they have to just discontinue some, don't they, and some
Yeah.
whatever. So I had the 3, but again, I had one that, as long as I had the one, that's fine.
Hmm.
So they kind of just freeze them then. And then they call you. So you have to have like your withdrawal bleed for 1 month. And then your
Yeah.
second month, then you have to just let them know like when your period starts. And then you go back on the ovulation.
Yeah.
And when I went back on ovulation, it was my sister's baby shower. But we decided, I was very open with IVF. I told people I was doing it, but I didn't say exactly when we were doing it.
Yeah.
Obviously, people like that I was working with and family knew. But when it came to the transfer, we were like, let's not tell anyone, just because we didn't know if it would work or not. Vinny knew, our eldest son.
So you trusted the 7-year-old at that point, right?
And you know what? He kept that secret
I bet
until
he
20
did.
weeks pregnant. I think also because he just didn't know what it was. He had no idea.
Yeah.
Like, didn't know what mum being pregnant is.
Yeah.
And obviously my mum and dad knew because they had to look after Vinny. So it was just our little circle of people. So yeah, then you go in for the transfer that way, which is it's not, I was going to say it's a little bit like a collection, but actually it's not, because it is not painful or anything.
It's quite undignifying though, right?
So you have to no, I know this is awful because you're a man, but you have to use like before you have the transfer from ovulation date, you have to use progesterone pessaries to like get your bodies taken your pregnancy, and they are horrific. So basically, you put them in you and they pop, and then they come out. So when your legs are up in this stirrup before they put the baby in, they like hose you out with a hose pipe.
So you know what? I've just got these vivid memories of that, and just in that room thinking, this is the most undignifying thing. Oh, do you remember the day you conceived? I mean, like, let's forget it.
Don't want to know about that. I literally remember thinking, oh my God, this is like weird. But I remember thinking, and when you like listen to people who have been through it, or like you watch something on like a series or something, they always say like you don't want to stand up after, you don't want to go through a wee because you think it's going to fall out. I mean, it can't fall out because your cervix closes.
Yeah.
All those feelings, like, I was walking so carefully
to carry you to the car by your feet. Yeah.
Literally, when we were going over a bump, I was like, go slowly, don't you go over that bump. Like, but yeah, I think that was horrific. And then I was like, I literally didn't even looking back, I really should have looked after myself. Like, even after egg collection, that was the most horrific pain I've ever been in. Even after like childbirth and everything, like that's the most pain I've been in.
You successful with your first IVF?
Yeah, I went back to work and it was all, crazy. I worked at the estate agents then, and it was just, I was always having to lift water meters, and I remember thinking, oh my God, if this is going to do anything to my baby, like I'm going to be so angry with myself. But
yeah,
it came to test day, and I was like, and also with that progesterone, it tricks you into thinking you're pregnant. So even if you're not, you still get all those pregnancy symptoms. So, and I was like, oh, like, am I? I don't know. And I'd be messaging Holly, and she was like, just take a test and find out. And I was like, I can't do it. And I was like, wait till test day. And I remember
it's not 2 weeks, is it? Don't they recommend longer than that?
Yeah, I think it's like, I think it is 14 days actually.
Right.
And mine was like a Monday or something. And I was like, I remember woke up on the Sunday morning and I was like, do you know what? I've just got to be brave and do it. But I woke up at like 4 a.m. and I took the test and I was like, I'm not going to look. And I put it in my dressing room and I went back into bed. And I remember like I could even feel my heart beating on the bed. I was so nervous. I was like, I can't go and look at that. Like, and I didn't go back to sleep, but I went and looked at it at 6 o'clock and I could see the line and I was like, my God, like, but I was like, I'm not going to say anything to Ken because he's even now, like, I mean, obviously we've been through way more than just the IVF, but he can't ever get excited. He's like, until the baby's here, I can't be like, So,
wow.
Yeah. So he was just like, that's really good. But
yeah, let's ground ourselves and yeah.
And he was just like, I know the first step's wet, but, I'd had miscarriages after miscarriages. And he was like, we've just got to take, each step. But then there's that horrible dreaded, you go for like a scan after. So then you've got to wait. I think, again, it's another 2 weeks. Because obviously, I think then when you take the test, you're already just over 4 weeks pregnant. I think you're about 5 weeks pregnant because they've been growing it haven't they? A bit further gone. So then you wait for another 2 weeks to confirm the heartbeat.
Yeah.
So that was, once I'd had that, I was like, okay, well, there's that. That's a bit better.
Once you went through the IVF, and then that was your daughter that was born through IVF,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
Yeah.
So how old is she now? You say she's 3?
3, yeah, just turned 3.
Wow. I know I'm not looking forward to the next part of your story, Beth. I'm almost like hesitating, but I want to just point out one thing. Like that feeling that you said, and you said about miscarriage as well, because you didn't mention that before, but like that's something that's really like always been a bit of a fear that we had. It's like, what if you get pregnant and then this happens? Yeah. And I remember so many times my half going through and like us getting tests, because we did super ovulation for, so I think from the start to the end of when we were going through IVF, we did super ovulation. Then I think we did like 5 rounds of super ovulation. Then we in Exeter, then we moved to Bristol and we did 2 cycles of IVF. The first cycle didn't work, and the second cycle they overstimulated her.
Oh my God.
And then that was in Bristol for the IVF. And when they overstimulated her, I remember, if you ever around and you hear someone say curious, Kate and I like fuck off straight away, because this woman used to go, "Oh, you're most curious," and we're like, what does that even mean when I've got my wife sat there with her legs up in the air with a baseball bat between her legs?
What's going on?
I remember we went through so many, at that point, by the time we got to the IVF, we almost believed that like, okay, cool, it's going to work now, because like we had all these failed attempts.
You don't you? You know, you see your success everywhere, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. You know, and I remember at one point when we were going through all of this, we came back from a wedding, and one of our friends was like, "Oh, on the way back, we were all right to just pick up something from Taunton." And we're like, "Yeah, no worries." Went into the mother care. We just walked around the mother care. It was like, oh, God, this is shit.
That's torture.
And also, where do parents buy stuff now? Mother care's gone. What's that all about? What is that all about? So what happened next? Because obviously I know what happens next, but like, what happened next in part of your journey?
Well, I had a very needy baby. I have to say this because Penny, I was determined to breastfeed with her. I just really wanted to. It was something I really wanted to do, especially if I wasn't. I mean, we'd obviously had the 3 eggs, so still got 2 in the freezer.
Yeah.
But let's say.
And Iceland. Why they say Mum's gone to Iceland? Eggs are in the freezer.
So who knows what we would do, whatnot. So I just wanted to do everything if she was going to be my last. And she would feed from me, honestly, constantly. Like, I'd never breastfed before, so it was very, to me, like a learning. I had to learn it myself, really. And I just thought if she cried, she was hungry. If she cried, she just needed me. So I made her a very Velcro baby for the boob. And so she would wake up every 20 minutes at night and feed. People say you can't get pregnant whilst breastfeeding, don't they? You know, it's a big contraception. So, I wasn't even trying to have another baby. I mean, amazing if that happened.
Yeah.
My sister, this is important actually, because my sister then decided she wanted another baby. So she was pregnant, same time. So I don't even know what happened. Holly, I'm going to go back to Holly. Holly then realised she was pregnant after having IVF, and she felt
wow.
And I was like, oh my God, no way. And I knew this was going to happen because she rang me.
Yeah.
She never rings me. And I was like, she's ringing me, to tell me she's pregnant.
Yeah.
Well, I'd always kind of wanted my tubes taken out because that's where my endometriosis was. So I thought if I have my tubes out, the pain will go. But I wanted to kind of see what my body was doing. So I was taking ovulation tests and I kept getting positive ovulation tests. And I was like, that's so weird, but hey ho. And then just one day I found a pregnancy test and I took a pregnancy one and an ovulation one. And as I was sat there, the pregnancy one came up straight away, like 2 lines, clear as day. And I thought, oh my God, I'm pregnant. The same things happened to me. But it was so dark. And I was like, God, like, how far gone am I? Like, what's even gone on here? So I remember, like, always imagined in my head, because of like everything that's happened with Vinny, I always thought if I ever get pregnant, I'm gonna, Kane can come home and I'm gonna be like, ding, 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 a test. But every time it's never worked like that. I'll ring him.
Yeah.
I'm so like, oh. So I was
I
like,
can imagine you're a rubbish secret keeper.
oh my God, I'm so terrible. So bad, especially with something like that. I'm like, I have to tell you I'm pregnant, So I rang him and I spoke to Holly and whatnot and took a digital and it said 3+ straight away. And I was like, oh, well, who knows? Because obviously I was breastfeeding. I hadn't had a period at all. So I didn't know. Like a few days went on and I was like, I don't know, something just doesn't feel right about this. But I didn't say anything. You just kind of keep yourself to yourself. And I'd said to Ken, can we pay for an early scan just so I can just make sure everything's okay? So I told my mum. I didn't want to tell anyone else, and my sister was pregnant, didn't want the limelight taken away from her or anything. So went for an early scan, and up pops this massive baby. And I was like, I was messaging her, this private scan lady who's amazing. I was like, I must be about 7 weeks, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, and she was like, that's a much bigger baby than 7 weeks. You're about 12 weeks. And I was like, oh my God.
Been going cha-ching, I've missed the first 3 months of pregnancy.
Yeah. So I was like, oh my God. And me and Kane were just kind of like, that's like amazing, after everything we've been through, how incredible. So went back to my mum and dad's, showed Vinny, because we hadn't told Vinny this time, and said, like, and he was like, oh no, like, I hope it's a boy, because he's always been surrounded by girls.
Yeah.
And so yeah, and then obviously spoke to the midwives, got into all of those, had my first scan at the hospital. You're like your 12 week. At that point, I had a 14-week scan. So that was all absolutely fine, no problems at all. I hadn't felt sick, but obviously when you've got a younger baby, she just turned 1. So I was on the go quite a lot and I'd just gone back to work. So obviously I'd come back to work my first day. I was like, guys, I've got to tell you something. I'm really sorry.
Oh my God. And at that point you were working for the business that your dad's,
yeah.
Yeah. So that's like, he's probably like, great.
He was
the
like,
worst employee we've ever had.
I just kind of went on and I was like, God, I haven't felt even any flutters. And I'd always felt flutters with the other two. I know. Why don't you do something else on the floor? Here, look. You get everything out for them and nothing then is surprise.
Yeah, but if you were going, oh, I'll sit with you, they'll be like, they don't want to play with you. They just want to sit there and watch TV and like glaze over.
No, she wouldn't care at all. Good girl. Okay, my mama.
Okay, my mama.
Oh, my mama. Can you get that?
I was going to make a joke about you wanting a family the size of the Waltons earlier on, and then you start sounding like one of them.
So yeah, I think I rang them. I remember being at work one day and thinking something's wrong. They were like, look, you're only, I think at this point I was like 16 and a half weeks. And they were like, you shouldn't, they really dismiss you, like you won't feel anything. And I do remember her laughing at me and I said, this is my 3rd pregnancy. I do know what I'm feeling. And every night I would go and get like more pregnancy tests to make sure the line was still dark and, it was still 3+. And I just, I wasted a hell of a load of money on that. But I always just knew something wasn't right. I think it got to the point where everyone was annoyed at me. Like my dad, every time I'm pregnant, he's like, hello, baby. And he did that. And I was like, oh, Dad, don't touch my belly because, it's not big. And I didn't even remember doing that. But he, at the time, said, I remember touching your belly and you being like, oh, no, And he was like, he says that even made me think, because I'm not even like that. And so anyway, I think got to the point, I woke up, it was Vinny's birthday on the Thursday, and on the Saturday, I just woke up and I was like, I need to have a scan. And nowhere would scan me because like the midwives are like, you just have to wait for your 20 weeks, you're fine, nothing's wrong. And I messaged the lady to say, look, do you mind if I just have a reassurance scan? And bless her, she was like, do you want to know if it's a boy, if it's a girl? She was so upbeat. And I had to message her to say, look, I think there's going to be bad news. Like, I just have this feeling. So when I got there, she was like, don't be silly, it'll all be absolutely fine. We all feel like that. And I was like, no, I know, but I just want to prepare you. And Kane was like, oh, she's been saying this to me for so long. And I think he'd almost was just like, you're really annoying me now. Like, it's just stop. So as soon as she put this scan on, you could just see like there was no life there. annoyingly, when you go for scans now, they have it all up on the wall and on
Mhm.
the screen, and I just was like, in the nicest way possible, I don't want to look at that. Like, is there any way? But Kane really wanted to. He was like, no, I want to know. Like, I want to know if she can see what, like, what she thinks happened, or because obviously I'd
Mhm.
shown no signs. I wasn't bleeding. I had no pain. I just didn't. I just had this gut instinct something was wrong. She turned off, and I said, "Is there? Can you find out if it's a boy or a girl? Because I would quite like, to know that." And as she was kind of sat working it all out, I think that's when it kind of hit me, and I just burst
Mhm.
out crying, and I was like, I think even now I still stick to that. I just didn't want the pity. Like,
Mhm.
and I remember saying to her, I just don't want people to pity me because I've been through so much.
Yeah.
Like Kane and I are quite hard-headed people. Like even now we're still like it, like what's happened to us has happened. Like there's so much worse people out there, like we've got 2 healthy children at home and a lot of people can't say that.
Yeah.
Um but then obviously she said to me, you're gonna have to go. I think she said to me, you're gonna have to speak to the midwife on Monday. So she then was like obviously kind of hit me with how you have to get the baby out kind of thing. And I didn't even process in my head. Like I never thought, oh God, how do I didn't think I have to give birth, like that was never a thing in my head that I thought, no, I've got to do that. And
Yeah.
when so unfortunately my best friend had actually lost a baby at the beginning of the year, full term. So
Wow.
I always thought, like, I don't know how anyone ever does that, and she was amazing. Like, I've always been in awe of her. And she was actually pregnant for the second time and announced on this day that I'd obviously found out I'd lost the baby.
Oh my
And
God.
all I wanted to do was ring her. And I rang her and I was like, look, I know this is a bad day because, you've got all this going on, but I just need you. Bless her, she was all the way in Linton and she came straight to me. But when you just need someone who's kind of been through that to help
Yeah,
you
yeah.
just
Because
keep going.
again, as a guy, your partner can only be there for you, but they can't
Oh,
help you in the like,
absolutely.
I'm sure it'll be fine. You're like, you don't know.
No,
Like,
and
yeah.
that's exactly what I was like. You don't know anything. Like we would even have like not arguments, but we would have a tiff and a taff and be like, "Well, you don't know how I feel, and you don't know. I'm the one having the
Yeah.
baby." Yeah, it kind of got to the point of like I've got to work out how I get this baby out now. So, and I tell you what, if I looking back, I'm so glad I had that private scan because she was so amazing, that private scan lady, and I think she was so much more like she understood. And I always felt really bad for her because and then this is her job. She has
Yeah.
to deliver the bad news, and she knows that. And it was probably good that I had said to her, and you know what I'm like, I don't like people to feel bad. Like I'm always
Mhm.
like, no, don't, it's fine, like it's okay. But I do remember thinking, God, like I've now got to tell people that I've lost the baby, and how do you even do that? How is that a
Mhm.
thing where you message people and say,
Is that like uh that moment when they go, oh, I've lost a baby, and then they do the instant head tilt, don't they?
yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah. So it was just a little bit like, so hey, after we'd been in there, everyone, all my family had come down for the weekend, and they were at my mum and dad's house. So I went back there and had like a good cry, and but once I cry, I'm like, right now I've got to move on. Like I've
yeah,
had a
yeah,
cry. What do I do? So
yeah.
I was waiting for the hospital to ring me back, but because I was already 18 week, like over the 18 weeks, you are automatically like on labour ward. So if anything happens, you go to them. So they were like, kind of,
What? That's like the worst place to be, right?
I know, literally.
Isn't, but it is.
Yeah, no, I know. Especially for people who like say it's your first baby and you've lost your baby, like that's not really where you want to be, is it?
Mm.
But I'd gone in and had this scam with the guys at the hospital. So you have to have like a registrar and a doctor there just to confirm the death. So had that, and then they said, so you take your tablet, you go home, and then you give birth. And I was like, whoa, 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 I can't give birth. I can't give birth to my dead baby. Like I can't do it. I'm not strong enough for that. And there was no other option. It was like you either give birth or well that's it really, that's the only way it's coming out. And I was like, well, can I have like a D&C? But I think I hadn't really realized how big the baby was. Do you see what I mean? Because to me, I was like, well, I didn't really want to, sounds awful now, but I didn't want to attach myself to it because I
Mm,
just know how I work. I'd been through this kind of pain. I mean, it's totally different, but I just was like, go back into your survival mode and you'll make through it.
yeah,
So,
fight or flight, yeah.
yeah, and luckily for me, I had one of my sister's friends on as the midwife, and she was like, "You stick to your ground, you know what you want to do, and you do it." So there was only a doctor in Exeter who would do this DNC for me, and I had to wait to hear back from him, but he can do it for 2 weeks, and I was like, "Yeah, no, I can't walk around knowing my baby's in, it was just too
Oh
much."
God.
So I think it was the Sunday night, and I said to Kane, "Look, we're strong enough, we can do this," because it wasn't only me that couldn't give birth at the thought of it. Kane kept saying to me, like, I just don't know if I can watch you go through it,
Yeah,
and
and
then in the
it's
end,
like he wants to be there for you, but at the same
yeah,
time,
how did you do
how
that?
how are you
Yeah.
there for yourself? Do you know what I mean? Let alone your partner.
And I remember saying to the doctors, like, I know I've got to do this, but there's not just one in this relationship, he's the dad as well. We've got to listen to what he wants, not just me. Um, but I said to Ken, I was like, we can do this. Like, I think we just needed some time to just brew on it. Like, it was all
Yeah.
happening so fast. We just needed like that time to just sit and realize, So I was like, let's do it. So I rang the ward and we went up within the hour. And my also biggest thing was Penny was so Velcro baby, I couldn't leave her. But they were like, no, like you're put in a family room. If she wants to stay, she can stay. So it was actually really, the whole setting is totally different, to actually giving
Yeah.
birth to your baby. So, and actually when I got there, it was all lit, like candle lit, and everyone was amazing. Everyone was so, so lovely. Um, and yeah, I mean, my body, the one thing good about my body is I give birth so fast. So I did know I wouldn't be there for days. I was like, I'll be in and out, like, within a second, not a second, but a few hours. So
Yeah, yeah.
I had the first tablet. I think I can't remember how they do the next. I think you have like a pessary. Um,
Right.
and I was like, yeah, no, like, so it's ramped right up. And that was the worst labor I've ever had out of all four of them. She was the worst I've had.
Do you think there's a lot of that because of the negativity around your mindset around like
Yeah,
what this is coming out? Because like, I've always struggled with this because people talk about labor being the worst pain ever,
yeah,
but at the end of it, it's the most beautiful
yeah.
experience.
Absolutely. I love labor. Like I would do it all the time if I could. Like
Wow.
there's just something about it. Like you just said, like it's just so, and each one is so different. Like
Mhm.
I mean, I've been so lucky enough to have positive experiences, I've never had like a bad. So that's probably why I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do really think that because it wasn't a positive outcome, I was more like, and they're still quite inclined to like not give you as many drugs, even though it doesn't affect the baby.
Yeah.
They're still like, well, just see how you go for a little bit. But by the time I could had something, I'd given birth to her, so which was quite
Oh,
good.
no.
Really. She was here quite quick, but I'd always said like I don't want to see her like as soon as I give birth. So I had Kane with me and my sister-in-law, because she is like if I needed someone there, it was her because Kane, bless him, he tried so hard to keep himself together, which you would, it's hard. As strong as like me and Kane are very dark humor, like, we get through things with each other by the jokes we make
Yeah.
and but I think at that time it was kind of clear that that wouldn't have got us through and we did need someone there to kind of keep us going and she did the best job and she did that. So I was really,
Wow.
but I did say to her, like, I cannot look at the baby. Like, it's just something I couldn't do. And Kane was the same. So I said, if anyone needs to look, like, you can, because in the end, I didn't really have to push her out. I mean, I did have to push, but it wasn't like an almighty. So when I obviously knew she'd come out, so then we called the midwives and they came and took her. But then I think about 2 hours later, they were like, well, she's in the cold cart if you want to go and see. And I was like, actually, do you know what? I can do it. Like,
Mm.
I think,
And probably like an amazing thing for you to be able to look back
yeah,
on because now, had you now not ever done that, there may have
yeah,
been an element of I wish I had.
I did. Absolutely. I mean, she did do like handprints for me to begin with before I'd seen her, and she took photos for me just in case I decided I didn't want to see
Mm.
her or hold her. But I was like, no, actually, you know what? I can do this. So it was just me and Kane at the time when we saw her, and it was horrible. But actually, it's quite amazing. Like, I remember thinking, like, wow, your bodies make a baby. And I was like, my body made her. Do you know? But
Mm,
she didn't fully grow. And but you could, like, it was just so strange because even now looking back, like I can tell they're all siblings. She looked like them, even that small.
yeah.
You can still tell. But and then it was obviously time to leave. I didn't really want to stay too long because I'd obviously had the other kids at home, and I was like, we just have to kind of
When you've gone through that, being in a maternity ward surrounded by people having babies and
yeah.
new mums and
Yeah, exactly. And you are on the ward, aren't you? So it's like,
mm,
and I was always very conscious of I don't want to leave when I know there's people out there having scans because, number one, you don't want to be around that. And number two, I didn't want to see anyone I knew because no one had known at this point unless I'd messaged them. So I didn't really want that whole. And then obviously it was very hard because it was, well, now, what do you do? Do you announce that you've had the baby? Because you don't want to be walking in, around anywhere and being like,
I distinctly remember, didn't you do a little video that you put on social media to kind of tell the story of it all?
yes, I did. Yeah.
Yeah, you owe
Yeah.
me some tissues that day because me and Kate, well, look, honestly, we sat there and looked at it, and I was, yeah, we were both just, well, my eyes have just gone now, but
Yeah.
just streaming because it's like when you know someone, over the years you've got to know people, and you see people go through stuff, you just don't like. I think it resonated for us with a lot because we weren't lucky with IVF, but actually I wouldn't change a single thing of where we are now.
No, exactly.
So, like, what was the next step for you guys then? Because, like, I know that there's a little man who
Yeah.
is now currently asleep and he's been doing really well.
Yeah.
And you were like, he might
I
wake
know.
up.
I'm like, hello. He
Like,
might even be
how did
awake.
how did we get to how did we get to
Um,
Rocco?
so we going back to when you lose a baby,
Hmm.
you name them and you have a funeral.
Good.
Yeah, I actually never knew that though. I didn't realize that that was like the next step. I didn't realize
Hmm.
that's that what kind of what you did. So that actually hit me quite a lot, to be fair. But I actually think that was amazing for Kane because he dealt with it how I knew he would deal with it quietly, didn't say anything, but also would message me and say, I can't stop crying. He'll never cry around me because he's a strong man and that's what men should do.
Well, I'm all for bollocks for that.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, I cry
yeah.
posting a letter. Bye.
I never
I
see.
licked this stamp.
So I remember saying and then obviously the consultants come in and they say whether they think something's happened or whatnot,
Mm.
like what's wrong with what could have been wrong with the baby. And following on, the reason why no one would touch me as in a D&C was because they said if you want more children in the future, that can really jeopardize your womb. And obviously,
Oh, wow.
I probably would want more children. So I was like, fine. So that's obviously what made my decision of giving birth a little bit more. Remember saying to one of the consultants, I won't ever have a baby naturally again. Like if I want another baby, I will do IVF. It will be, totally, it won't be through trying myself. And I
Yeah.
remember them all looking at me and they were like, well, why? And I was like, I don't know. I actually can't tell you. And even to this day, I can't even say why I felt like that at the time. I think I just had a good experience with Penny and she fixed me because I'd gotten pregnant, after all the troubles and my body went back to normal.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, so I was always like, and I said to Ken, he was like, yeah, fine. So we actually this was in the August of 2023. And in the January, I had booked to go to BCRM to talk to them about next baby.
Mm.
So I'd booked the appointment for the February. End of January, I had a dream that someone who in my family that had died had come to me and said to me, "You need to take a pregnancy test because you're pregnant," which is really weird. Like,
My God.
I am quite spiritual, but I know that sounds really ridiculous. So it came to it, and I was like, "Oh, well, I'll take a test anyway, like whatever." So I bought really cheap ones.
I would imagine you probably had like subscription
Yeah.
test just come through once a month anyway at that point.
So
It always makes me laugh at stuff like that. I bet on Amazon you could buy a pregnancy test. I bet it says subscribe monthly.
oh, I bet it does. Hilarious. Well, because people actually do that, don't they? So I was like, well, I'll just take one. I'll go and buy one and I'll take one. And you could see like the faintest line. And I was like, oh, have I just got line eyes? You know, going back to really infertility, back to the infertility days where you see a line, but there's no line, but that's
I
what
love that
line
you
eyes
said
is.
that because I totally relate with that because the amount of times we've looked at it, even though we know that last month that said no, and we've looked at it the
Go
following
back and
month,
look, don't you?
and you're like, is that a cross? Is that a line? What does that mean?
And no matter how you look, and you look up in the light, and you're like, yeah, definitely a line. So I was like, nah, it's not a line. And then I think it came to, and at this point I was still breastfeeding, and my periods weren't regular again. So I was like, well, I wouldn't even know, whatever. I took another test, and I was definitely pregnant. So I was like, well, I'm not going to tell anyone. I'm just going to brew on this myself and just see what happens. So I think about 2 weeks later, I was like, well, nothing's really happened yet. And I feel really sick. So I'll tell Kane. But I was,
Oh, you didn't even tell Kate.
no, I didn't even tell Kane. I was like, I'll just keep this one to myself because he goes into complete shutdown mode now. Like, he's like, I'm scared. Like, what's going to happen? What's coming? You know? After everything we've been through, he's like, I can't cope with this. Like, just get this baby here and it will be fine. So I remember being in the shower and he came in the bathroom and I was like, I've just got to tell you something. And he was like, yeah, okay. And I was like, I'm pregnant. And he was like, no, you're not. He was like, don't tell me that. And I was like, no, I actually am. And I was like, I think I'm probably about 3 or 4 weeks.
Wow.
So I'd actually, the next day, he was fine, happy, yada, yada. When the next day I'd gone to Sainsbury's and I had really bad pain in my tummy and I was like, oh no, like something's happening. So I'd rung him and I'd said, I'm about to faint. I'm gonna give Penny, because Penny was in her pram. I was like, I'm gonna give Penny to one of the people that work here, but meet me at Sainsbury's. So
Oh, wow.
he'd come and I'd literally fainted. I said to him, look after my baby because I'm gonna faint. And so anyway, got an ambulance up to A&E and I had a scan. And they did that when you're early, you can see the sac of the baby, but obviously there's no heartbeat because it's still growing. And
Right.
I've known this from IVF days of, the embryo takes a few days to pop as such, and then the heartbeat comes. So he'd said to me, this man, he was like, oh, it might not be viable. Like, it's probably just not a viable pregnancy, and you'll lose it within the next few days. And I was like, whatever. Like, I was just a bit like, okay, like, and I'd obviously said to him, like, but these things can happen. And he was like, well, yeah, but I can't see anything. There's just a sac.
Well, he sounds like he's got away with words.
Yeah, I was like, great, thanks. So they referred me to the early pregnancy unit, and they are so good that they're so lovely. And they confirmed in the 2 days that had been, the baby had popped and they got the heartbeat and everything. And then because I was so nervous, obviously previously what had happened to Flora, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. They scanned me every 7 to 10 days, which was amazing. So I had a scan literally once a week, right up until 18 weeks, and then you get handed over to your consultant. So obviously I was consultant led with Penny, with Flora, and with Rocco, obviously just because of all the problems I'd had. And then I think after Flora, I had this realization in my life. I was like, what is going to make me happy? Like, I just didn't feel happy. Like, obviously, I was sad from losing the baby. I just wanted to do something that made myself happy because I'd started losing all my hair after I'd lost Flora. And I was just like, my body's obviously telling me something, I'm not happy, I'm stressed and whatnot. So I was like, I'm going to get a new job. My job's not making me happy anymore. Like, it's too stressful and it just didn't work for me anymore. I'd been there for 10 years or over 10 years, I think. And I was just like, it's just time for a change. So I applied for quite a few jobs at the NHS. This was even before I was pregnant with Rocco, and got offered this job. And it was just when I found out I was pregnant with Rocco. So when she called me, I had to say, I would absolutely love the job, but I'm really sorry I'm pregnant. And she was like, new baby, new job, you go for it. Like, we can't discriminate. And I actually work in the maternity unit now. So I'm a secretary consultant, and it is the best job ever. And I honestly think it was all like the right place at the right time. You know, everything just fell into place. And I actually watched a video on here the other day of someone saying and if you ever watch this, it'll be funny, but there's a saying in Devil Wears Prada, and I don't even know what the saying is, but when your life around you falls apart, something good is coming. And I was like, oh my God, looking back, that's so true, because I felt like my whole life, you know, at the time, everything was going wrong. Like we were trying to move house and it was you know, everything kept going wrong with that. And, you know, we'd lost the baby. And it's just funny how you're in a rut. And even if people say to you, you know, it's going to be okay, you can't see that it's going to be okay. Like you just, you know. And I do remember at the time when I'd lost Flora, like my sister had her baby, and she was a girl. And I remember thinking, God, people are going to pity me because, you know, I am very like, even for going back from my infertility days, I always worried how people would like want to see my reaction to things. So like if my friends had a baby shower, I'd always be like, right, put on your brave face today, like really smile, you like be over the top so people think, oh, you're okay, you know. And I've always been like that. But I think it wasn't until after I'd had Flora that I thought I don't have to be like that. Like there's so many people out there going through all of this, you know. I need to relate to it really. Like I never
if you could go back that first round of IVF and so forth, and like tell yourself something that you like literally know now that you didn't know then, is there like one bit of advice you'd give yourself?
I don't talk advice because I love, even I obviously don't love that I lost a baby, but I love everything that's happened because it's made me so strong, and it's made me and Kane like, you know, like an unbreakable bond. Like we've got so much together, like good memories and bad memories. But I would just want her to know that it's okay, because that will make me cry.
That's what I think is the beautiful thing, though, is that even through everything you've been through, you are okay.
Yeah.
You and Kane are okay. You've got three beautiful children.
Even if I didn't have what I have today and IVF didn't work, I know I would have been okay. But I think there's just no one to actually sit you down at the time and be like, this is going to be one heck of a ride, but you're going to do it. And it's going to make you 20 times better today than you were, you know, however long ago. Because, you know, it's made me appreciate so much more than I ever have and I ever will, you know. But even with Rocco, I had a feeling again, I was like, this baby's coming. Like, I'm not going to go to full term, you know. And I remember sitting at my desk with the doctors all behind me, and I turned around to them and I was like, guys, I think I'm in labour. And they were like, no, it's just your Braxton Hicks. And I was like, no, this is a different, you know. And I remember texting in my family chat, and I was like, guys, I think we need a bit of a plan if this baby comes, because I haven't even got a car seat. Like, I've got nothing. Like, you know. I think we were just so like, we just moved house. We were all just trying to focus on all of that, you know. And this was in September, and he wasn't due until the end of October. And came home, and I was like, yeah, no, I'm 100% in labour. Like, you know, this baby's coming. I'd had all the signs like the whole month. I'd known, and I've been saying to people. And anyway, 9 o'clock at night, me and Kane were just sat there, and we heard, well, you could actually hear my waters. They were like blub 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 blub. And all of a sudden, my belly had the sharp pain and my waters just popped. And I was like, oh my God, like my waters are gone. He jumps out of bed and he's like, quick, like there's two.
How many weeks early were you?
So I was 34 weeks.
Wow.
Which didn't even register in my head. I was just like, ideal, like, let's go, let's do this. But then I think when I rang my mum, because I'd just been on the phone to her as well, to be like, I think I'm in labour, you know. I rang her and I was like, oh yeah, my waters have just gone. And she was like, you know, like came up to sort the kids. And it wasn't until she got in, she was like, it's a bit early though, isn't it? And I was like, oh God, it is. I was like, I didn't even think about that. Because I had felt ready for so long. I was like, I think I'm going to be all right, Mum. I was like, you know, the baby was measuring big anyway. And I was like, it'll be fine.
I remember walking through our local town and I saw you, your mum and your sister. And I was like, baby, Beth, baby. I was like, my brain was going,
when did you
hang on a minute. And I'm like, oh yeah. And I remember thinking to myself, like, wow, like, yeah,
Yeah.
like must have been one of those moments for you where like when you got to that point, you must have been like, oh my God, what now, right?
Yeah, well, when I was pregnant with Flora and I'd had that private scan to say, yeah, everything's okay, and you were 12 weeks, I was like, oh, I'm 12 weeks, let's announce it. So I'd done like a really cool announcement. Never with any of my pregnancies have I ever announced I'm pregnant until about 20 weeks, just because of the fear factor. Even with Vinny,
Yeah.
like I always waited that long. So I think I always shot myself in the foot with Flora, and I thought that's why something happened to me, because I announced it at 12 weeks and I thought everything would be fine and it wasn't. But with Rocco, I was like, not telling Sol. Like, I'd bump into the street and people were like, oh my God, you're heavily pregnant. I was like, oh yeah, I just don't want to tell people, because of.
Yeah.
But I think when I'd had him, it was very much like, this is going to sound awful as well. Every time I've had a baby, I never cry. I think because it's just oh my God, the pain's gone. Thank God. And it's not until they've had the checks and the baby's okay, do I sit there with them in my arms and then I cry? Like, I don't cry afterwards, like, but when I went into the hospital, my waters had obviously gone. You have to have it confirmed that it's your waters. I wasn't sent to delivery, I was sent to triage. So when I got upstairs onto triage, they were like, you have babies really quickly. Like, do you feel like it's coming? And I was like, no, because that never happens. It's only the last hour that like things ramp up and I have them really like, within that hour. And she was like, oh, I just don't know how I feel about, you either going home or like what. And I was like, I'm going to go home. And they were like, well, we'll just have to see what the doctor says. And obviously, I knew this doctor because I'm their secretary. So I know.
Oh yeah.
And I said to her, like, you need to believe me when I say, like, the baby's coming. Now, when you're in triage, your husband or partner, whoever, isn't allowed to be with you at this time of night because I think at this point it was about 10 o'clock. So I begged for him to stay, which he was allowed. And they had said that they were going to give me the steroids to make the baby's lungs grow, give me some tablets to stop labor, and I can go home for 2 weeks and then just see how. And I was like, no, I'm sorry, but that's not happening to me. Like, for starters, you're not sending me home. And secondly, I'll be having this baby, like it won't work. Well, it might have done, who knows? So for about 2 hours, we were waiting. Am I going to have the steroid? Like, what's going on? But in the end, they decided, yeah, steroids are coming. Don't worry, we won't stop the labour. You can go for it, but you have to stay upstairs. You can't go down onto delivery. So not once was I examined, because when you have a premature baby, if they examine you, it's a higher risk of infection.
Right.
They basically would just, don't touch her, and if she has nothing, her body will just like delay labor, basically. I mean,
Yeah.
that doesn't happen for me at all. It just wants it out. So I was ringing this bell like someone needs to come and help. I was panicking because I was like, I just know this baby's coming, but no one would examine me. And I was like, I need to be examined. I need to know how far gone I am. At this point, we were on Bassett ward, where you go when you've had your baby and you're on the ward with your baby until you're sent home. So I was in a little room, a side room with Kane. Kane had fallen asleep because he's like, that's what he does when I'm in labour. He just sleeps to chill.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I always wake him up half an hour before when the pain's bad. So I woke him up and I was like, no, baby's coming. So called the midwife in. She walked in and she just rolled her eyes and she was like, what's going on now? And I was like, no, 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 like, you need to examine me. And all she would do was look in with a torch.
That's dignifying, isn't it?
And she was like, no, I can't see anything. There's nothing there. It's probably just the baby moving down. And when she walked out the room, I said to Kane, it's me and you. Like, we're doing this together. Like, we're not going to have any help. And he was like, well, don't say that. And I was like, no, honestly. So got to probably about 15 minutes later, and I was like, yeah, I'm pushing. My body's doing it itself. I can't stop. And obviously he's like, stop pushing. Like, we need a midwife. No one was coming at this point because someone had gone on their break and it was just us. So it got to the point where his head was out and I was like, Kane, my dad had given me a brand new jumper because there was nothing in this room. It was just a side room. And he'd given me a jumper and I was like, that jumper's clean. Catch the baby with the jumper and I'll rub his back. And I was like, it'll be fine. Like, I know what we're doing. So I'd he'd come out as he was like belly out. The midwife had clocked us and came running in. And I said to her, I don't even know if I was ready to push because I wasn't examined. Like, I mean, obviously my body was doing it, but She was like, no, 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 if you're doing it, it's obviously ready. So then she'd fought him with Kane at this point. She was like, put him on me. And I just remember your survival instinct coming, didn't they? Like, you rub a baby to make them cry. So I was like rubbing him, like, just cry, you're going to be okay. I'll just grab him. Once the hour.
Like, it's like he turned up for the delivery. Hello, mate.
You don't care, do you? You chill. He's an easy baby, aren't you? While I was in labour, I did have the intensive care unit come down and say, like, when the baby's born, like, there'll probably be about 20 people in the room because he'll probably come out not breathing, you have to be prepared for all of this. And I was like, yep, fine. Like, I know. And all I kept thinking in my head was, oh my God, it's just me and Kane, basically. What am I going to do? Like, there's going to be a load of us. But when he came in and I was like, I remember holding him like this and saying, the baby's breathing, just take him so I know he's okay.
Wow.
And, thankfully, he was big. He was £5.3, so he wasn't like a premature weight. But he did have breathing difficulties, so he was on CPAP for a while, and we got sent to Exeter. And we were there for about a week. So I remember Exeter saying to me, like, once you're home, like, as long as he's not dependent on you feeding, you'll be able to go home. So as soon as we came back to Barnstable after the week, I was like, right, I don't want the tube in his nose anymore, like, I want to feed him as much as possible. And it all went really well. So we were so lucky, with all of that. And we got discharged 2 weeks later. So we were home at 36 weeks. So, which, I mean, normally you have to stay in until your due date.
Yeah.
So we were really lucky with you, weren't we? And he's thrived ever since, really. He's been really good.
So what when you messaged me a little while ago and you were like, Annie, thinking about setting up a podcast, and you'd set up an Instagram, what was your because you talked about this of like, it's weird that you just, when we talked about what you would say to yourself.
Yeah.
Is that part of your motivation, do you think, towards like setting up that definitely. Instagram?
Yeah. So I think as that's gone on, a few of my friends have now unfortunately gone through baby loss, infertility, and I kind of, not that I'm the one that everyone comes to, but I would think I'm first port of call, what do you think about this? And I don't want to do that in a nosy sense of way, but I wish I had someone to do that to for me. I love the NHS, but if I could have not wasted all that time trying to get pregnant with things that didn't work, that they wanted to try, but they knew didn't work, I wish I had someone to just say that to me, just go for IVF, or don't even bother with that, do this. And recently, last week, I found out that someone I know just had a stillborn, and, she thought she was the only one around her, that had one. And I think it helps when you know someone, because you do feel like, God, why is it just me? Like, and again, like I said at the beginning, you're so naive to things in your first pregnancy. It's always, you hear the horror stories, but you don't think it's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
And then when it does, you're like, how do I deal with this? What do I do?
Yeah.
And so I think I want to just get other people's stories across. I've spoken to some of my friends who have been through it all as well. Like, are you brave enough to share your story? Because there's probably someone, even if they don't want to say that they're going through it, but just to watch that video to know, I'm going through that, but this might help, or that might help. Or
you put a post up the other day, which Kate and I totally resonated with, because there was that moment where you put that video up on your Instagram of doing your first injections. And I remember, you do it in the hospital, but then when you get home, you've got to do it
by yourself.
Yeah.
I could never do it. I just could never sit there, and every time I'd be like, no, I can't do it. And I always remembered thinking at the time, I'm gonna not be an influencer, but I'm gonna go onto Instagram and I'm gonna do a daily, day in the life of me on IVF. But when it came to it, I thought, if this doesn't work, I don't want to look back on this and be sad about it.
Yeah. Amazing.
So, but it was, looking back, It's what everything's happened. It all happened for a reason,
Yeah,
and I do stick, by that.
I love that.
I,
So, Beth, how can people find you on your Instagram and kind of connect with you and follow your journey? I'm going to have to ask this one question before we start, though. Any more children?
hopefully, one more, just
Hopefully,
one
one more.
more. I've got to convince the baby daddy. He's
Right. So we're going for 4.
just four, the four. I mean, we've got 2 in the freezer, and I've been saying to him, "Shall we?"
I love that. I love all this terminology that I think that other people in the world think, oh, that's inappropriate. You can't say that. Or, but as like going through IVF,
Yeah.
it's like, it's like we always used to have like a bit of a running joke. And weirdly, Beth, like from someone who didn't have anyone, we didn't have anyone to talk to about when we went through. We
No.
went through, I remember at the time of going through IVF, particularly the IVF. I mean, we didn't go through any of the other, wow, journey that you've been on.
Yeah.
I've got friends who have been through IVF and been successful. I've got friends who haven't been successful. I've
Yeah.
got friends who have had, who have lost children, and it's just I can't begin to imagine what what that must be through, not only emotionally, but what it feels like for your body as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for a start, I want to thank you for one being open and sharing what you do, because I think it's incredible, Beth. So what's your Instagram, and how can people connect with you and kind of
Yeah. So I've made an account, All Things Baby and Me. I did kind of take not a step back from it, but Rocco got quite poorly in May time. So, and that kind of just took over a bit. So I'm going full steam into it. And I just do little posts really, just about the things I've been through, things even that have happened in the day. Just do little things like that. And when I announced Rocco, actually, I did right from the very beginning of us being so young and getting pregnant, sounds awful, but not meaning to get pregnant. And then showing how, infertility then stepped in, and, videos of me not dealing with it on an okay day, and then getting pregnant, losing the baby at the funeral and everything. I just think it's important because people don't quite understand that you can talk about those feelings. I mean, it's not an easy thing to talk about. It's not something you can just be like, oh, I lost my baby in the middle of a conversation, but there's not a day that goes by, even today, that I don't cry for Flora. There's still guilt that I've got children and I had one after her. There's all those feelings that are valid, and I can, it's fine that I feel like that, but it's just not something that, particularly in my friendship group, there's so many of us and we've all got so many children between us. We've all had our individual journeys to get those children. But sometimes I do sit there and think, God, I've had to work so hard. Like my body's had to work so hard to get here. And some days I just want to sit there and not to bring down a party or anything, and just cry. Sometimes I just have to get those emotions out, like because I'm proud of myself, or because I'm happy for what I've got, because it's just not something that's like in society that you do, you don't just come out with, I lost my baby and I'm really sad today, what gestation that is, even if it's a miscarriage, I lost my baby today and I'm really sad. It's just not something that people say you should do, but I think we should kind of change that, even for the men, because men don't really get there, but they don't know how to deal with things either, do they?
That's the thing that I think is really powerful, is the fact that, like, you've mentioned this on so many occasions throughout this. It's like even going through the horrific experience of having to give birth.
Yeah.
And you were talking about, no, this is our baby, he's the dad.
Yeah.
And even when you talked about going into triage, it's like, no, I'm not going home. He's not going home. He's here. Like if I missed my baby's birth because I wasn't allowed to be in there, and I've got a friend of mine who, during COVID, I remember they weren't allowed in the room and he had to wait outside. Ironically, he worked at the same hospital. He was so he was, but he wasn't even allowed, until it was like, scrubs up, let's go. That they weren't,
and you're all alone. I don't know how people did that. I really take my hat off to
amazing
the women that dealt with that, because I wouldn't have dealt with that though.
Amazing. Beth, I want to thank you so much, one, for coming on and telling your story, but two, for sharing what you do, because I think, by sharing what you do, I've talked about this a lot about sharing my own stories and my own things that have gone on in life. But I think if one person listens to this and goes, actually, I might ask my consultant this question.
Absolutely.
You know, they go, and I joke, even the fact that you've come on a podcast and we're like, do you know what? I've got the kids here, but I'm like, yes, cool, because do you know what? This is reality, and this is what real life is like. This Instagram world that we see where everything's so polished.
Yeah, no, that's not me.
Being a parent is full on. I mean, we haven't even got into like what it's like being a parent. But, I mean, maybe we'll save that and we'll get you on another episode at some point.
Day. When Claire's like, and I'm like, help me. No, I'm doing.
Yeah, you're probably too young, but have you seen the film Look Who's Talking?
No, I haven't.
Well, there's a part in that film where she's like, her hair's all like a mess, and there's a scene with John Travolta where like she's smoking a fag and he's coming home from work, and it's all like just what you imagine like it would be is hectic. So, but yeah, Beth, thank you so much. And,
Thank you.
I look forward to catching up with I'll put your Instagram handle and stuff in the show notes.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you.
And that wraps up today's episode of the Coffee, Chaos and Confidence podcast with me, Coach Casey. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure you like and subscribe. It helps other listeners find the show. Also, go and check out the show notes to learn more about my incredible guests. Until next time, make sure you chase your dreams without limitations.